In this training video, Erika will be taking us through the process to enter travel expenses into SMART. Following her procedure will ensure employees are paid promptly and that we maintain accurate records. Thank you for taking the time to learn with us.
For everybody who messes with SMART, we start out on the home page and you go down to the drop down and you go to expenses. Now, I know most of you guys have this knowledge, but since this training, we're going to go through it through the basics and everything. We're going to go on expense reports, and I have quite a few that I need to do. This currently is my list of travel vouchers that I have to do. Some invoices are mixed in here, but this is all the travel vouchers. We just recently had a mandatory VSR training, and my computer's not working with me. So we're going to work on Conlon's. This is what his travel voucher looks like. For those of you who fill out the travel expenses, or you've actually had to submit it, the basics. They have their employee ID, their location, the dates of the travel, what the travel was for here in the description. And then we're going to drop down and we're going to put the dates. They're going to put the dates that they traveled, where they traveled to and from, if they had hotels, if there was breakfast or lunch or dinner. All of this is going to show up on here. I don't believe that this year the hotel provided anything like that. So we don't have any of that to take away. Before you guys enter in any of the travel expenses, you have to make sure that one, it's signed off on their by their supervisor, and two, you have all the paperwork. If you do not have all the paperwork or the sign off, then you cannot enter it, and you need to go back to the person who submitted it and tell them what you need. These travels do get audited, so you need to make sure that you got every document that you would possibly need for every charge that you're entering. If this were an out of travel expense, the director would have to sign off on it, regardless of whether or not the superintendent or the direct supervisor sign off on it. You have to have 3 signatures on here. If it's not there, do not enter it. Go back and tell them what you need, because if this is not signed off and we get audited, we're going to be in trouble. So we're going to start with the meals and incidental. I just start from the top and just go down to the bottom. So the first thing we do is we're going to enter in their employee number. Once you enter in that employee number, it's going to pop up with their name. If their name in SMART does not match up with what's on your expense report, go back, talk to them about it, because these are legitimate records and they need to be filled out appropriately. I have had where guys have piggybacked off of each other, and one of them did not change their employee ID. Piggybacking is fine, but it's not okay to not have the proper documentation information on there. So we know it's Conlon. We're going to drop down to the business purpose. This business purpose is going to be basically anything that they're doing. So if they're in training, we're going to use training. If they're in a meeting, we're going to use meeting. If they're at a conference, we're going to use conference. For the day-to-day stuff, the majority that you would use would be agency support activity. So if like somebody goes to an outreach, that's not a conference, it's not training, and it's not a meeting, but it's an outreach where they're just standing there giving information about about the program that they support and stuff like that. You're going to use the agency support activity. This was training, so we're going to use training. And then you need to put in the report description, and that is listed on the travel expense. Everything that you're entering into SMART is going to be on your travel expense. Once you've got all of that information in, you're going to drop down and you're going to put in the dates that they traveled. So they traveled on the 2nd, and we're going to go to meals and incidentals. This is your per diem. This is the per diem that they get. In this, you have to, it won't let you get past this part unless you put a description in there. When I do the description, I put the dates of when they started their travel to when they got back, and where they started and where they went to, their destination. Once you have all of this filled out, you're going to drop over to the payment type. This is one thing that we do get a lot of returns back on. You need to make sure that you are putting in the appropriate payment type. The majority of the payment types are going to be cash or P card. Those are usually the only ones that we use. It would have to be a really special case to use anything else. We want to pay them out, so we want to use cash. Any reimbursements needs to have a payment type of cash. If you don't, they will kick it back to us, and a JV will have to be done. So what I've done is I've gone in now and I've put in their originating location to their destination. I have to do the refresh because it didn't automatically populate the times. Your very first line for your meals and incidentals, the only thing that you're going to be changing is going to be this first line. Is going to be the start time. Leave the end time alone. Once you've done that, it should populate properly. And I don't think I think this is correct though. There we go. So what it's done here is it's calculated because you're not going to get paid the full per diem because you didn't start early enough. So if he had started at like 5 or 6, then and he didn't have any breakfast or anything like that, then it would have been the full per diem of $59. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. He's got at least 3 more lines that we need to add on to this. So we're just going to hit the plus sign. And then we're going to drop down. We're going to change our date to the very next day. And it's still going to be meals and incidentals. I go up and I copy and paste what I put in here because it's the exact same thing. We don't change any of this here. We don't change any of the times because they're still on this job. They're still in the middle of this travel. We're going to drop down and we're going to, I forget. This is going to be the same. The originating location is still going to be the Wichita because that's where they're at right now. That now becomes their originating location. We're going to move down to the next one. And again, we're not changing any of the times. We're not doing any of that. As you can see, it's populating the full 59. He's getting the full 59 because they don't have lunch. They don't have dinner. They're not being provided breakfast. If they were to have lunch, dinner, or breakfast provided, we would go into the per diem deductions, which is on the line itself. And you would click on that and you would determine whether or not they had breakfast, lunch, or dinner provided. And if they had all 3, then you click all 3 and that'll tell you exactly what happened. They're not going to get anything for that because basically your per diem is to pay for your meals. The meals were provided if that were to happen. So this is going to be his last day of travel. This is where he's going to travel from Wichita back to Topeka. And we're going to change these. Actually, I'm not going to change that for Wichita. The reason why I'm not going to change that is because they're not in the same pay rate. So you're going to have some areas that are less. They're not going to hit that 59, or they're going to hit 64 or something like that. And so we're going to leave it like this, because if we don't, then it's going to change the pay rate. And we want to, because now it shows the travel as starting from Wichita, which is a higher pay rate, versus traveling from Topeka. So when you're on your last day, you're going to go in and you're going to change the end time. This is going to be the time that they actually arrive back home or back to their office. And now at this point, you can see it says 206.50. Their meals and per diem should match up to this number, 206.50. So we know we've got all of these lines entered in. If he had tolls, we would enter those in. We would enter in parking, cab, shuttle, Uber. It all goes under cab fare. We don't put the rental car on in this upper part because they're not getting reimbursed for that. The agency pays for it. There is very rare occasion where a rental car will be paid to the employee. It depends on the travel situation, and that's up to the agency head to determine whether or not they'll get reimbursed for it. So once you've got all your reimbursements entered in, I like to do those first because then you can see that your total is the amount that they're supposed to be getting back. Then you can start entering in your deductions. This does not deduct from their travel. It just deducts from our system to let us know that we had charges. So this is what the travel hotel portfolio looks like, or their folio, not portfolio, but their folio looks like. We most of them do not look like this. This is just because there's multiple days. We had reserved several rooms in advance and then gave a list of names of people who could be checking in. And so they get, instead of each person getting an individual checkout folio, they sent over this one. And so Vicki was kind enough to go through and break it out when she sends me over the information. And it'll give a total. So his total for that was 374.37. So we're gonna go in and we're gonna enter that in. This was not conference. Even though it was training, it was not technically a conference. So we don't have to worry about using the conference lodging. If this had been an actual conference, like training and conference, then we would be using the lodging conference choice. But this was just training and we just booked it ourselves. We weren't having an actual conference. So you're going to go down for your lodging, and it's going to be prepaid lodging. Like I said, we pay for all of that stuff. I know that when Vicki sets up our BSRs and stuff like that to go travel and they need a hotel, then she'll call and she'll make the reservation and she'll get them over the credit card information, which is what everybody should be doing. We shouldn't be putting anything on personal cards, having the travelers put anything on personal cards unless you are approved for a certain special situation. And again, that's like through the head of the agency. So we're gonna do prepaid lodging, and I'm just gonna copy and paste this information. You have to have a description in here or it won't let you go through. Now, because this was paid by the agency, we're going to do P card. It was put on a P card, and that's what we're going to this also this also, when you put it in P card, it also lets you know that it lets the system know that the employee should not be getting this as a payment. Does that make sense? Okay, I'm gonna hope it does.
Yes, it makes sense to me.
does.
I had the hardest time. Do you remember wrapping my head around P card, like, and cash?
Yeah.
Because I kept
Yeah.
telling you, no, it's already paid for. And you're
Yeah.
like, I know, but you have to put it on there. And I'm like, no.
Yeah, it was way back when, like right before Carol left us, that she went through an Astra training, because they used to do training on this. They used to do like an all-day training on stuff like this. They don't do it anymore. And yeah, they said that we had to start entering in our enterprise and our hotels.
Basically, the way Erika put it to me was anything that was paid for that specific travel goes on this report.
Yep, pretty much.
I
pretty
could
much
not wrap my head around it.
Yeah, it kind of sucks, because what happens is this stuff, we as an agency, the only time we do travel authorizations in the system, which is basically like creating a PO to encumber money, we only do that at the end of the year, because we know we're going to have people traveling. We don't know exactly how much we're going to need, but we need to put something in the system that'll hold that money so we can pay them. But yes, yeah, Amanda, you're absolutely right. Anything that has to do with this trip needs to go on here. I do not dig out the gas. I'm not going to do that, because then nobody would get paid half the time. It would take forever. So we don't put that on. If he had a rental car, and it looks like he drove one of the agency cars. If he had a rental car, then we would have dropped down and we would have done prepaid car rental. But we don't have to worry about that, so that's nice. And all I did is, if you find yourself adding a line in that you don't need, you just use the minus sign and it'll delete it. Pretty much, this system is not as unfriendly as some people think, as long as you don't save it. If you don't save it, then we can go in, we can delete stuff, we can edit it, delete it from the system. But this is what the entry looks like. And then we're going to go to summary and submit. On this page, this is where our checks and balances come in on the parts that you guys are doing yourselves. There's no other people involved in this portion. So this part actually is a checks and balances on the stuff that you entered here. So we know that his per diem was $206.50. So the amount due to the employee is $206.50, and that's what we want to see here. We don't want to see any other number here. If it does not match up with what you have for his reimbursements, his or hers, don't submit it. Go back into your expense details, check, if you've made something prepaid when it should have been cash, and you have to be sure that you're using the appropriate drop-down codes. If like tolls, non-K-tag tolls, that particular one is going to be that's always going to be a cash account. Prepaid, anything that says prepaid, that means that we have prepaid with a P card. So we know that we've got the $206.50. We don't need anything else. It'll show what the expenses were, and that's how much his hotel was. If he had other prepaid items here, then this would change. It would all calculate here. So, and then this is the total of our expense, or the expense of his travel. Once we've looked that over, you're going to click this. This just says that you're certifying that the information that you submitted is accurate and correct, and within the policy. And you're going to hit submit expense report. This gives you a second chance to make sure that your numbers are good. again, you have to make sure it's correct, because if we overpay them, then they have to get us a check back. If we underpay them, then we have to go back and we have to re-enter another travel voucher and to get them where they need to be. So it creates extra work. Once that's done, once you know we're going to pay them $206.50, we're going to hit OK. You'll know that it's gone through and that it was sent, because you'll end up with this line here. It'll go red and it will give you a report. Now I keep all of my stuff digital, so I go in and I save them in my travel vouchers. Who is this guy? Oh. The way I do this is actually basically really simple. I want my documents to be so that if Melissa or Crystal or Eric wants to get in and look at a travel to see if somebody was paid what they were paid, they know that they can go into someone's name, they can go into travel vouchers, then the person's name, and then depending on the fiscal year that it was paid, they would go in there. And then I give them the report number and I give them the dates that we actually paid them for. And then I include the date that I actually paid it. I know that the date of modification and saving is here. However, though, if you modify, like say you go in and you want to add a note to it, it's going to change that modification date. So then you don't really know exactly when it was correctly paid, unless you go into the system. So that's why I always put this pay date, the date that I did it, and then I save it, and then I move on to the next one. So this one here for James, he had tolls. So if you were to enter this one in, you would go in and you would enter in their meals and incidentals, and it looks like he got mileage. Looks like he got he was allowed to take his own car at the reduced mileage rate. So there is an option to put in miles at a flat rate, and I think we have time to do this one. Please let me know if you guys have any questions. I might be running through this way too fast. And I don't want to. Yeah.
This is Dee.
Yeah.
Early on in the first one, you said something about it had to be signed by the director if it wasn't travel.
No, if it is out of state travel.
Okay, that's what I thought that you intended, or I didn't hear. If it's out of state, that makes sense.
Right. Thank you. If it's out of state, and again, it doesn't matter. Deputy director, superintendents, anybody who's doing out of state travel, it has to be signed by the director.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, nobody gets a free pass on that. So we're gonna do this one. His was training, and it looks like train VA PACT Act, and it looks like he had some outreach. I'm getting this information from here. I'm not going to worry about this because the majority of this was training, so I'm just going to put it under training. You don't need to worry about, oh, well, it was this and this. Whatever you choose here is going to be whatever they were doing the majority of the time on the travel. It's just easier to break it out like that. So his was the 22nd. And we're going to go again, meals and incidentals. And I'm going to, because I already have the dates that he traveled, I'm just going to change I'm going to change from where he came from. So he traveled out of Overland Park into Wichita. I put the locations, not the cities. He was in Overland Park. For that VCAP or for that VA PACT Act, he was actually in Overland Park for that. So I don't need to change. I don't need to change anything on here. We're gonna go cash, and then we're gonna do Wichita. I'm gonna do this more. Usually this here, once you enter this in the location, this should populate. If it doesn't, just go up to the refresh, hit it, and then that'll drop down. And we're gonna change his time to 8 a.m. That's when he started his travel. And so $44.25 is what he should be paid. Doesn't want to work here with me. And again, we have multiple days. So the 2 days in between, we're not going to change any of the dates or any of the times or the location. And we're just going to keep rolling. Don't do like I just did. Forget to change your dates as you're rolling through. So we're back to his last day. And we're going to change when he arrived back. Hit that refresh, so then it will calculate this. So $44.25. We have $206.50 in meals and incidentals. We're going to now enter in his mileage. So there's basically two options for you to do mileage. If he was approved for mileage at the higher rate, then we would use this auto per mile, and then that would calculate it against the 0.655 that the rate is currently. But because he probably had the option of getting a rental and chose not to, they're gonna authorize it at the lower rate. So we're gonna use the flat rate. We're just gonna put our info in, and then we want him to get paid for it, and then we're gonna put our amount. And the location he went to Wichita. So that's how you do a flat rate. You should already have the mileage rate already, with your information. We use this form here, private mileage rental comparison. So the private miles was going to be considerably higher than the rental. And so they went ahead and instead of giving him the full rate, they went ahead and did a reduced rate. That will happen the majority of the time, because if you are given the chance to get a rental, you should use the rental. If something were to happen and one of the people get up there and there are no rentals at all, then they would be approved for the full amount, because that's not due to them choosing not to take the rental. It's because there's not a rental available now. We do have that option. We do have that happen pretty often, especially during the summer months, because everybody's traveling during that time. A good portion of our locations do have vehicles, like our cemeteries have vehicles that they can drive back and forth to on travel. I know the homes have some vehicles that can be used for travel. The agency central office just recently got 2 vehicles for just that reason. So if we can take advantage of those, that's where everybody needs to be. That's what they need to be doing, is taking advantage of that. So once we've gotten this in, we're gonna go to his tolls. And his first toll happened on 4/22. We're gonna go down to tolls non-K tag, because he didn't use his personal K tag. If they use their own say they didn't stop at the toll and get a ticket or anything, if they end up using their own K tag, like their own personal K tag, they can get into their account and submit the charges for that travel. And that does count for reimbursement. And again, we need to pay him for this. So the first one was $575, and that happened in Wichita. We're gonna go here, and it was on the last day of his travel. So we'll go down again, tolls non-K tag. Punch that in. We're gonna pay him. His return was $575. Only this time we're gonna change this to Topeka, because that's where he had to pay it at. I don't even know where I live. Sorry, guys. So on his travel sheet, it says 426.44. Fingers crossed, that's what we have up here. 426.44. Now we are free to go ahead and go in and put in the prepaid stuff. Again, the reason why I do it in this order is to make sure that they are getting everything that they should be refunded. We don't want to miss anything as far as like prepaid stuff, but I would rather miss a prepaid item than have a reimbursement item get missed. And so he was at the same training as the one before, and we're going to enter in that hotel. And again, it's a prepaid lodging. Just going to use the same description. We're going to do P card. 7. You have 3 nights, and the Hyatt. He didn't have a rental. He took his personal, so we paid out those miles. So we know that we have everything entered in. So now we're going to do summary and submit. Again, we check and make sure that our number there matches up with what's on the sheet. And this is what's on the sheet, is 426.44. So you guys don't think I'm lying. So we know our employee is going to get 426.44. You're going to click this and submit. Verify 426.44. It all matches up, and we're going to hit OK. This is basically the most basic portion of entry in Smart. There's not much you can really mess up unless you get a wrong code. But the codes are pretty much self-explanatory. Are there any questions?
So, remember, okay, this is Sheila at Veterans Home, and I'm still learning Smart World. So you save these, and I know I saw you go through your file drive how you saved it and all that, but how did you get it to something that was savable?
So because I work I don't work in the office. I don't get them hard copied anymore, or I don't get the hard copies anymore. Vicky goes through everything and then she uploads that to me. That's how I get them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not something you do right here.
No.
How did you save this report, Erika?
Did I save this report?
What you walked through just earlier with the first one, and you said you were saving it?
Yeah.
Saving the report, is that from this screen?
From the one that we're looking at now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So what I'm saving is the actual travel voucher itself.
Okay.
Let me pull it back up.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. So what I'm doing is I'm saving this because this is the documentation that I'm going to need if any of these get pulled for audit.
Okay.
Especially
So
when we
this, not a screenshot or
no. I'm not saving the screenshot.
I missed that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Me too.
No, fortunately, Vicky is kind enough to upload everything for me. If not, her and I would probably be sitting on each other's lap because there's not much room in the central office anymore. So, but yeah, I get them in PDF form, and then I do all the data entry into Smart for it. Now, I don't have anything. I don't have one to show you because it's very rare that we have them. And you'll want to write this down. Same day meals. There is a drop down for same day meals, and that is the one that you need to use. Basically, a same day meal is a meal provided to somebody who's worked over, I think it's like over 3 or 4 hours of their normal time. So they got to put in at least, I believe, 12 hours or so from their normal time to get a same day meal. At the same time, that same day meal has to be approved by supervisor, head of the department, somebody like that. They're not always approved, but it needs, I mean, so if somebody's asking about it, they have had to have worked at least 3 to 4 hours over their normal time doing actual, agency work. There are some stipulations in there for the same day, and I think you can find that in your trifolds. But I know there was some confusion with meals and incidentals being entered in to pay for that, and that's not the way we should pay for that. We need to use the same day, and it is It is one of the deals that are listed in there as a drop down. So
it would be an extra entry after the regular meals are entered?
No.
For that day?
No, technically you wouldn't have a same day if you have an actual travel. So for you to get meals and incidentals, to be able to use the meals and incidentals code, you have to have had a night stay. You have to have at least 1 or 2 nights stay to use the meals and incidentals.
Okay. So where it's just like a day trip type thing.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If it's a day trip, and there's certain stipulations. I meant to bring it up, but I couldn't find my trifold, and I don't know what to say to that. But yeah, if somebody's saying I traveled, X amount of miles from home or the office, it put me at like 5 hours over, then they would be entitled to a same day meal. However, though, that is between the traveler, their supervisor, and then their supervisor's supervisor. So it's not something that we practice on the regular because of the strict guidelines that it follows. Okay. So nobody else has any questions?
Yeah, I do. This is Sheila. So on mileage, if the person chooses to use their own vehicle, let's say if it was me going to Wichita for some day conference or something like that, and then I'm not going to return back to work. I'm going to do stuff in Wichita, see family, shopping, whatever, and then go home. Would I be able to just turn in mileage from here to there?
Yeah. So the mileage, and this works for any of the travel. Your mileage is going to be based on from where you left to where you went. We're not going to pay anybody to do any private traveling. We don't do that. So if you were to leave, say you need to travel and say you're going to come out here, but you're not going to go into the office first, you're going to leave from your home. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at your miles. If you're actually getting miles, because that does have to be approved. It has to be pre-approved before you actually do your travel. Somebody has to say it is okay for you to use your own personal vehicle. You can't just get in your vehicle and go and then be like, oh, I use my own vehicle. That's not the way it works here.
Right.
And just so you guys know, if your travel comes across and if there's nobody knows that you have private miles, I will ask. I'm very, very strict on the travel. So any travel is based off of the shortest route. So say you leave from your house and you head into Topeka. Say the mileage from your house to Topeka is less than the mileage from the home into Topeka. So we would use the lesser of the two.
Okay.
So, and as far as like travel goes, like you said, and we do have people who travel and then they do their own thing, stuff like that. The only thing that you are to pay out in travel is from their point of origin to their destination. Anything in between that, especially say you travel for like a couple of days and then only you're not actually traveling straight to your destination. You're gonna veer off and you're gonna go somewhere else. Those extra miles that you've put on, we're not going to pay you for those if it's personal. Now, if this is all working, then we're going to pay you, the route to make sure that you are paid appropriately. Does that make sense?
It does. So I would still need to put in like my time back from Wichita back to my house, or am I just going to put the one way? Because I'm okay the way.
No, so you're going to do, you're going to do to and from. You're going to get paid mileage to the location and then back from the location.
Okay.
Is the mileage the same if there's a company vehicle available and it's just an option to not use it? Is the mileage the same or is it different?
If you have the option to use an agency vehicle and you choose not to, more than likely you're going to get bumped down to reduced rate. You're going to get the miles, but you're going to get a reduced rate because technically you could have used a company vehicle, not your own vehicle, and it would have, saved us money. So you're going to get bumped down to that lower rate. Because at the end of the day, travel, and when you're entering it and you're working with people submitting travel, you have to keep this in mind. At the end of the day, travel is not to expand your pay. It's not part of your pay. It's not guaranteed. And we do need to watch what we're doing to make sure that we're doing it appropriately for the agency and we stay within the guidelines that have been set by the state. If we're not following those guidelines, we are going to be out of compliance. Not to mention, we are going to go through our program funding like it's out of style. So that's something to remember. We are flexible. We can be flexible, but there are some things we just cannot do. So if somebody does have the option to use an agency vehicle, and they're just like, no, I'd rather take my own vehicle, then they're going to get bumped down to that lower rate.
And
I know a lot of time when
Thank
that
you.
happens, when people are using their own personal vehicle, maybe their spouse is traveling with them. I know the director takes his wife some places, and I've taken my husband. And so you can't have anybody outside a state agency, a state employee in a state vehicle, even one that's rented. So that's why a lot of times that does come up more often than not, because you cannot have somebody else in there. So that's a lot of the reasons why people take their own cars instead of a state vehicle.
We still have a little bit of time. I'm just going to run through how you would look up a travel that's already been entered. If you were to enter in a travel and do a save for later, you would look it up and find an existing. I shouldn't have any out there, but we'll see. Eric. It's always my guinea pig. So I don't have anything for him. It started to put in a travel for him, and I realized I didn't go through and do all my checks, and I don't have, like, say, his enterprise receipt. I would save it for later, make note of the report, and then I would be able to go back and do it and find an existing value. Once you have entered in a travel, the only way to pull it up would be through view. Once it's already been submitted and everything, you can't pull it up and find an existing. You have to go down to view. When you do a search, whether you have the report number, if you have the report number, it's going to take you to that exact report. If you're not sure what the report number is, but you know that you're looking for some travel that they did, around, that should have been submitted in April, then you can search by their name. And so what we're looking at here, this is the list of all the travel that has been entered in for Eric. So he went to a conference. Well, that might actually be a really good one to look at. So, and you would just click on it and then you'd be able to look at it. So he went to a conference. Not only did he have parking, which we paid him, he had baggage fees because he took a plane there. So we paid out baggage fees. Air travel, you want to make sure it's on prepaid air travel. If we have paid for the ticket, make sure it's on prepaid air travel, because I'm not going to lie, I've grabbed air travel before, not thinking, and it's wrong. It should have been a prepay. So I am not without fall, guys. It will happen. But just make sure that you are, if it's prepaid, it is prepaid. Now, since he went to a conference, it was a legit conference. We used prepaid lodging, the conference. Usually the stuff that is out of state, usually is going to be conference is going to be, the lodging conference. Just because that's usually the only time that we actually travel out of state. But see, it's not really different than your normal in-state travel. In-state travel, we don't pay taxes. If you get a receipt that has taxes, you need to contact them. We need to have that corrected. We need to be refunded. Out of state travel, we have to pay taxes. So if you see taxes on there, there's nothing we can do about it. We have to pay them. And that's pretty much the basics. Once you've submitted something, if you're not sure if, like I have a particular manager that is not timely on his approvals with his travel. So I will run a report and see who's out there. Also, if you know the report that they're asking about and you want to see if it's been approved, you can go back into view, and then on this very front page that they pull up for you, you can see it was submitted by me. Crystal approved it. Eric approved it, and then Crystal approved it again. Crystal has to approve Eric's because, well, Eric can't technically approve his own. So, and that's another thing. That's another thing is if you yourself travel, you cannot enter in your travel. You should not be entering in your travel. You need to get somebody else to enter it in so then they can go through the approval process. Does that make sense? Because we have to have the checks and balances. Crystal just brought up a good point. If at any time someone loses a receipt, and this is going to go for your guys' P cards as well, if they cannot find the receipt, not at all. What you want to do is you want them to write down the date of the charge, the amount, where they were, and have them sign it and put like a little verbiage, lost receipt, blew out the window, circus clowns took it. I don't care. Just as long as they have something on there saying that it was lost, it's not retrievable. This was the amount. This is who the person was that had it, and the date, and submit that keep that with your paperwork. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Especially with out-of-state travel, because audit will review all out-of-state travel, which is why we also go to that extent to say, remember that all out-of-state travel has to be signed off on by the director of the agency.
Now, I know you guys aren't going to have like a ton of questions probably now until you go in and actually start entering in travel. And that's fine. And travel needs to be entered in. I believe our IMPP says it'll be entered in within 2 weeks. But keep in mind, especially if they've got money out like tolls or cab fares or something like that, you would kind of want to get that to them as soon as possible. So we can't just let the travel set. People start sending emails, people start calling, stuff like that, because they have put money on their own cards more than likely, and we don't want to cause them any more inconvenience than them already having to pay out of pocket at that time. So it's just common courtesy. But I want to make sure that you guys also have the information and training that you guys need, and that does bring me back around to your guys's travel. If you guys have somebody travel out of your home, but say central office is paying for it, even though central office is paying for it, you guys still need to enter it in. I will provide funding. I know there's been some confusions about that, with who's going to do what and stuff like that, but it's better to keep it all in-house and everything, because then you guys keep the documents and it gets entered in the way that you like it. So,
right. So when you come back after your couple weeks, then you'll be doing that again. Then we're just filling in while you're out.
No, you guys will be taking over your guys' travel.
Oh, from now on.
Yeah, you guys, yeah. That was the point of this training, is to get you guys the basics. So, but that's really all I have right now, guys. Like I said, if you guys have any questions, just shoot me a message or whatever, and I'll answer you pretty quickly.